Hello everyone, my name is Legend Ronnie and this game is Rise of Kingdoms. Scipio Africanus version 2.0. This is what we're gonna talk about today, and it is more than a year since I have done his Commander Spotlight, so I do believe that he does deserve a review on the Commander Spotlight. Scipio Africanus is also a very used commander, especially in the New Kingdoms or the free-to-play players, so I believe that you guys definitely deserve a review on this commander. Not to mention that one of my most asked question was about Julius Caesar in the same time. So Scipio Africanus and Julius Caesar, they share the same exact talent tree. So you definitely want to stay tuned on this video if you're interested in both commanders. They are pretty much similar, exact same talent tree, so there's something they can share, they have in common. Right here, now because he is a epic commander, he is very easy to upgrade, but I'm just gonna pop in two fast images, just to have an idea in terms of stars and sculptures, how much you're gonna need to max his skills out. Just press pause and you can study them after that. It's for the legendaries as well, but we are talking about epic commanders right now. These are just general pictures and general guidance in terms of stars. The sculptures is the exact number. Scipio Africanus, probably and one of the most used commanders at the beginning of the kingdom. Why do I say at the beginning of the kingdom? Because at the beginning of the kingdom, all the free-to-play players and the majority of players, they don't have enough troops to do specific type of marches. So nobody has 200k troops or 150k cavalry, infantry or archers to actually do specific type of troops. Everyone does mixture of troops, and for that reason the majority of players, they choose Scipio Africanus because he's also a leadership, he has boost for mixture of troops, he also has a bit of conquering and attack, plus his skills, they go a little bit defensive and offensive in the same time, so he has a mixture of both, while in the same time he does all damage when he attacks city, and he's a leadership commander. That means he can bring more troops capacity in the march. So at the beginning of the kingdom he does have a little bit of advantages, and people do use him. I did use him as well. You're noticing that he is level 60, but as the time passing, his utility is dropping a little bit, not that crazy, but dropping a little bit in terms of not being used as primary commander. So he still has utility, he's still a very useful commander, but not necessarily as primary. But in the beginning, use him as primary commander, there's nothing wrong with it. 1 month into the kingdom, 1.5 months into the kingdom, but after that you need to focus on specific specialization commanders, such as Pelagius or such as Babers. You can definitely work on them from the beginning. There's nothing wrong in that. Those commanders can also be used with mixture of troops, and you will benefit later on a lot more from them. But if you started with Rome, which is one of the most selected civilization, just because when you start the game the arrow is pointed exactly on Rome, and the majority of players, they actually do not scroll left or right to see if there's other civilization, and they start with Rome. So there's nothing wrong again starting with Rome or investing in Scipio at the beginning. Just don't forget there's other commanders that will benefit you a lot more later on into the game. Right. Let's go about his talents, because pretty much that's the most important part that everyone is interested about, is the talent builds. Now just in case, and this is valid for Julius Caesar, like I said, Julius Caesar and Scipio Africanus, including Hannibal Barca, these are commanders that have, all three of them, they have leadership, conquering and attack. They all three have the same talent tree, so pretty much they can have the same talent builds. So this is for single type of troops, and the reason I'm doing this for Scipio Africanus is because it's also valid for Julius Caesar. And for Julius Caesar I do have a recommendation being used, and I did use that particular march for a very long time. I was very happy about the results using Julius Caesar primary and YSG secondary. So this would be the talent build that I would do if you want to use Scipio or Julius Caesar for one specific type of troops. My recommendation would be not to do it, because there's other specific commanders that can be used for that role. But if you do want to do a specific type of troops with Scipio Africanus, because you probably like his skills, you like his benefits, it's working for you, then this would be the build. This would be the build that I would go with. But for mix of type of troops which this commander is actually built for, this is the talent build that I would recommend. So you have armored and you have armored, which also increase all damage you do and decrease all damage you take. So you have advantages for having mix of troops while using Scipio Africanus. You deal extra damage and you also take less damage with him. This is something that you can change if you're not very happy about it. 2, 5 and 8. This is 8 talent builds that you can actually change if you think that 6% march speed will make no difference for Scipio Africanus, and you kinda have a couple of options. You can fill up Steely Soul, and you can also go for Martial Mastery. So that's actually 6 talents, and you probably have 2 more. You can do on Unyielding, get a little bit more counterattack damage bonus to stack with his counterattack damage bonus from his primary skills. So again, there's options you can go around with the build. I'm always a fan of mobility, trying to get faster on the battlefield or retreating faster from the battlefield. In some situations you have to retreat, there's no shame in retreating, live to fight another day. Right, so this would be the talent build for mix of troops on the field battles that I would do on Scipio. Now, because he is a conquering commander, he also have a build for rally. Entrenched is actually a very interesting talent, and I would definitely and personally use it when you are attacking any type of garrison situation. Now they are mentioning here strongholds. Now they are not saying cities, they are not saying flags, they are not saying fortresses, they are saying strongholds. Now I want to take strongholds as any type of garrison situation. So for any type of garrison situation, I would definitely use entrenched, but my hopes would be that it probably only works against city. Now I'm not 100% sure, you have to ask the support because they're not giving us any more details on the description of this skill, but I believe that it works on any type of garrison situation. So for that reason, I'm going with entrenched. Now because you're doing a rally, when you're doing rallies, you actually care about doing as much damage as possible, because that's for the reason you're doing a rally. So you're not doing a rally to be defensive, you're not doing a rally to take less damage, you're doing a rally because you want to take down an objective and you want to cause damage, you want to cause them pain. Fight to the death. That is another talent that I would go with Scipio. I have effortless and I have martial mastery, because Scipio doesn't do any active skill damage, so you want to do as much normal attack as possible. When it's field battles, it's nothing that crazy. It would help you, but nothing that crazy. But in a rally, when it's a rally, that's a lot of troops in there, definitely normal attack being increased by another 6% will definitely help you. Now because he's a mix of troops commander, he definitely has a mix of troops build. You have 3% all attack damage dealt because you're having mix of troops, and you're taking less damage by 3% because you're having mix of troops, and I would use him with mix of troops, and that way that 3% less damage you take is gonna reduce this 3% less damage, and you actually have all damage by 6%. Isn't it that actually awesome when you just think about it? Yes, it is. Right, so there's a lot of all damage increase by using Scipio, or like I mentioned, Julius Caesar or Barca. So this would be the talent build that I would use with these commanders if I would have to rally any kind of garrison or objectives, and I would definitely use mixture of troops for them. Now, if you want to do a single type of troop rally with Scipio or Julius Caesar, that's a little bit less likely. Or I would say that there are specific commanders for that role. There's plenty of archer commanders out there, there's plenty of infantry, there's plenty of cavalry commander if you want to just do one type of troops. But if you're doing mixture of troops, this is the one. How I would change this around to actually make it for one type of troops, I would probably just get strategic prowess. So I would orient this on the right side, just get strategic prowess and steely soul if I still have enough. That would be the only change I would do, probably unyielding if I don't have enough of steely souls, something like that. But again, these commanders are built for mix of troops, so definitely you want to use them for that. Right, now it's mentioned about his talent builds. We talk about for how long actually should be used as primary commander, or at the beginning of the kingdom, you know, for about 1 month and a half. Like, again, there's nothing wrong with using him as primary, but later on he kind of drops in utility in terms of field battle, being used as primary. So don't get me wrong, Scipio Africanus is still a very good commander and still has a lot of utility, but as a second in command. So for example, if you want to do a lot of infantry marches right now, Scipio Africanus is one of the commanders that you use for those marches, but as a second in command. So either second in command to your Eulgi or second in command to whichever other infantry commander. Charles Martel as a second in command, that's also working really good, like max counterattack, but as a second in command. If you want to use primary, you definitely want to use it with mixture of troops, and again, that's at the beginning of the kingdom. Another utility he has as primary commander, and that's still really good utility, is in the Sunset Canyon. So in the Sunset Canyon, he's actually very useful primary with mixture of troops, and you have talent builds for that as well. Right, yo. A very well-known pair for Scipio is with Joan of Arc. So with Joan of Arc, Scipio Africanus primary, Joan of Arc secondary, it's a well-known pair being used together, but they are not as tanky as you're thinking about. They have normal attack damage increased by 25%. Joan of Arc has a little bit of healing factor, but they're not actually as strong as you think. They're more like a buffing team, if you want to call it like that, because Joan of Arc will gonna keep buff and will buff all your allies around your march. One very well-known pair with Scipio Africanus that I recommended, and I believe that it still works, is the punching bag theory, which the theory behind it is having a large amount of troops in a march. Now the only way you can do that is with leadership commanders that actually have troops capacity bonus. Now a free-to-play version, since we are talking about Scipio Africanus, would be using him with Osman, which are the only two commanders that have troops capacity bonus. Now that's 20% troops capacity more than you can have against any other marches. You can also do mix of troops, and you can use Scipio primary, but recommended would be to use Osman primary. The reason why is because of the skill. So when I first made that video about the punching bag theory, it was about using Scipio Africanus primary, because that's one commander that most players actually invest in. But as later on, as the game is being updated, there's nothing wrong with the commanders, it's just how the game is being updated. They are introducing a lot of skill damaging commanders. So for example, any other commanders that were introduced new into the game, like we have Saladin, we have Edward, we have Tomiris, we have Genghis Khan, they are all skill damaging commander. You just upgrade the first skill of a commander and you have 2500 damage factor. let's say that takes too long to do a skill, but you upgrade for a skill of Genghis Khan, you get 1700 damage factor. So that is really heavy nukers that you can bring on the battlefield with just first skill maxed out, which kinda outguns the defense of some commanders. So for that reason, you need as many nuking commanders as possible so you take your enemy faster down than they take you down. So for that reason, this punching back theory is just has a slight change, and preferably would be to go with Osman primary, so you benefit from the skill, which also gives you rage restoration. So Osman will do faster skill damage, and Scipio Africanus will give a little bit of protection to the march with his primary skill. So for that reason, I would actually go with Osman primary. But if you want to use Scipio Africanus primary, like I mentioned in the beginning of the kingdom, you can pretty much pair him with any other commanders. If you want to do mix of troops, he's very universal. You want to use him with Sanzu, you want to use him with Eulji, that's fine. You want to use him with John, you want to use him with Boudica, he's very universal. At the beginning of the kingdom, when everyone is doing mix of troops, because that's pretty much all they have, there's nothing wrong. 1 month, 1.5 months, but after that, you should already have side project, if you want to call them like that. And those side projects, they should be commanders like Sanzu, which you're investing in, commanders like Pelagius that you're investing in, and if you actually want to go on Archer, someone like Herman or Kusunoki, or if you want to do more infantry, someone like Eulji. So you need to have some of these side projects that you're also working on. So at the moment when you're noticing that Scipio becomes a little bit overwhelmed on the battlefield, you start training one specific type of troops, and you're making that perfect march of yours with a specialization commanders, and it will give you a slightly edge on the battlefield. Now, how else can Scipio Africanus be used is definitely, like I mentioned, as a second in command, and even on the high level of gaming, it's still being used as a second in command. Either reinforcing flags, either reinforcing rallies, or simply on the infantry marches to give you more protection to your infantry, because that's what infantry needs, but as a second in command. So he still has utility. There's nothing wrong if you invested in him. He's never going to be a waste. He still has utility. He's still being used, and he still brings a punch on the battlefield. But again, like I mentioned, and even the punching back theory, which something is a video, a very old video which I've done about it, they are still working, but you need to have nukers in them. So for example, if you want to do Scipio Africanus and Julius Caesar as a punching back theory, it's not really gonna work as much. It's not gonna give you the benefits or the expectations that you have, just because, like I mentioned, there's so many nukers that are being brought up in the game, which pretty much outguns the commanders that don't do damage. We have even infantry commanders which do quite significant damage factor, which is a passive skill. You just do like 5/5 on this commander, and he's just gonna drop nukes that will probably go like, wow, is this even possible? Or we have a gatherer commander which max out his primary skill and has 1400 damage factor, which is quite a lot of damage when you just think about it. Right, now if you want to use Scipio Africanus for rally, you can pretty much use him as a on the rally with any other commander that is also conquering. So if you want to do a free-to-play rally, you can definitely use him with someone like Baybars, which also reduces the attack and defense of the city, someone like Osman, which also does nuking. So you definitely need to have a nuker in your march. So if you want to rally with Scipio Africanus, a city, you definitely want to make sure that you have a nuker in your march. And because you probably don't have legendaries maxed out and you want to benefit of your epics, you need to make sure that you're using some conquering epics, so that way you get some bonus when you are attacking someone's city with the skills, trying to utilize the entire value of the skills, or as much as you can. That's pretty much what I have to say about Scipio. Again, his utility is still up, he's still very useful, but not as crazy as is being used before. I actually did use him when I've done a 5 versus 5 match, and like I mentioned, it does give protection to your march. So for example, when I've done a 5 versus 5 game with someone, my YSG was always being a target. You see his max skill, so I was using YSG with Frederick or someone else, and he was being a target. Alright, so he was swarming it with 5 march and he was just going down, like just like that, really fast. So I've done, on the second time I fought with him, I done just a slight change. So this is something that you can do on field battles as well. There's no shame in doing it. I put Scipio Africanus as a second in command to my YSG. Now, that sounds really crazy, isn't it? Like, who would do that? I've done it and it actually worked. So on that 5 versus 5 test, by the time he took my YSG down, I took 3 of his marches. On the previous test, my YSG went down after I took his first march. Now this time I took down 3 of his marches and my YSG only after that went down, because I had Scipio as a second in command, which again was not giving me benefits like damage a lot, but it was giving me some protection to my armies, and on the same time a lot of troops attack by 100% for the next 2 seconds. Plus I was bringing more troops on the battlefield. So for that purpose, increasing the survivability of YSG, it actually worked, and there's something you can do in a 5 versus, not necessarily a game, but on an actual war. You're probably having problems. Let's say Genghis Khan is being nuked down. You're taking all your 5 marches out, your Genghis Khan is your highest nuker, and you're having a lot of problems. Just try it out. Just try it out. Put Scipio as a second. It doesn't matter if he's still a target, if your Genghis Khan is still a target, but you're buying time. You're buying time for your other marches or your other allies to actually inflict more damage to the enemies that are trying to take that march down. So this is something what Scipio is also very useful at, and some people are not actually using it. I have even used Minamoto, for example, because I do 5 marches on the battlefield. When I go into war, I do 5 marches. I always do 5 marches. And I use second to Minamoto. My Minamoto was a target. I was using Minamoto with Frederick, and it was a target. It was always going down. I was always having a lot of severely wounded. So another modification I have done, I have put Scipio as a second in command to my Minamoto, and he automatically just became a little bit more tankier, and he was actually surviving longer, allowing my other marchers or my allies to inflict more damage to them. I would obviously, because you're probably asking, what if I have Julius Caesar? I would definitely use Julius Caesar if I have my Julius Caesar at least 5-5. So if my Julius Caesar would be at least 5-5, I would be a little bit more inclined to actually use Julius Caesar over Scipio, but still the troops capacity also makes a difference. So I would say that if Julius Caesar is 5-5, 1-3, so you get at least 9% troops capacity, from that moment I would actually be inclined to use Julius Caesar over Scipio. But again, he's a legendary, it's not something you want to invest in, a very universal commander. So there you go, there's plenty of options or utilities you can use for your Scipio if you're noticing something is wrong on the battlefield. For example, another example, maybe your Sun Tzu. You're noticing that Sun Tzu and Eulji is not performing as well as you're hoping. You can definitely try Sun Tzu and Scipio. There's nothing wrong. You're using Hermann and Kusunoki or Kusunoki and Hermann, and you're noticing that your archers are being demolished. you're not getting any output of your archers, or not as crazy as you're thinking about, just try put Scipio as a second and then see the difference. You see, there's just small modifications that you can do to your marchers which can actually prolong their survival on the battlefield. But this is something that, you know, it's not you just do your pre-setup and then you just go and then fill up your hospital. You kind of need to pay attention to these kind of things, because this can actually help you out on the long run or help your team. Now, if you have any question, you can always drop them in the comment section below. I'll definitely be happy to answer them. Until next time, this is your bullet General signing off. Peace out, yo, and take care.